Lieutenant Kekstar had been watching the empty space for 3 years. His job was simple and boring. He sat in the monitoring station and looked at screens that showed nothing but dark space. The Kepler void was a place where nothing happened. No ships passed through it, no planets existed there. It was just empty space between the star systems. But today was different. At first, it looked like a small problem with his equipment. The gravity sensors showed a tiny change in the readings. Kekstar checked his instruments twice. Everything seemed to work fine. He made a note in his log and went back to watching the screens. 20 minutes later, the readings got stronger. Much stronger. Kekstar's green skin turned pale. His 4 eyes focused on the screen that showed impossible numbers. Something massive was affecting gravity in the void. Something bigger than a moon. Bigger than most planets he knew about. He called his supervisor. "Commander Vextal, we have a problem in Sector 7. "What kind of problem?" came the tired voice through the speaker. "Sir, something is coming out of the void. The gravity readings are off the charts." There was silence for a long moment. Then Commander Vextal's voice became sharp and alert. "Send me the data, now." Kekstar pressed buttons with his thin fingers. The data flew across space to the commander's office. He heard the commander curse in the old Zephyrian language. Words that meant things were very, very bad. "Keep watching," Vextal ordered. "I'm calling the capital." The next hour passed slowly. Kekstar watched his screens as the readings grew stronger. Space itself seemed to bend and twist in the void. His instruments detected energy patterns he had never seen before. It was like reality was tearing apart. Then it happened. A hole opened in space. Not a hole that ships could fly through, but a real tear in the fabric of existence. Strange light poured out of it, light that hurt to look at directly. Kekstar covered his eyes with his hands and looked through his fingers. Something came through the tear. At first, he could only see a shadow, a massive shadow that blocked out stars. His computers tried to measure it, but the numbers made no sense. The object was too big, too long, too impossible. When the tear closed and the strange light faded, Kekstar got his first clear look at what had emerged from the void. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling an ocean a puddle. The vessel stretched across space for what looked like forever. His instruments finally gave him real numbers, and his heart nearly stopped beating. 53 kilometers long, 12 kilometers wide, 7 kilometers tall. The ship was bigger than most space stations, bigger than the floating cities of his homeworld. It was a monster made of metal and unknown materials that seemed to eat light itself. Kekstar's hands shook as he activated the emergency beacon. Red lights flashed throughout the monitoring station. Alarms screamed in the empty corridors. The beacon sent a priority message to every major power in the galaxy. A message that said the impossible had happened. Within minutes, his communication board lit up like a festival display. Messages poured in from across known space. The hegemony wanted details. The ethereals demanded explanations. The Trade Federation asked for confirmation. The collective requested data downloads. Every empire, every alliance, every power that ruled the stars wanted to know the same thing. What was this massive ship? Where did it come from? Who built it? But Kekstar had an even more frightening thought. His scanners were finally picking up details about the ship's construction. The metal wasn't hegemony steel. The energy patterns weren't ethereal crystal technology. The design wasn't from the collective's perfect geometric shapes. The markings on the hull were in a language he recognized but barely believed. Simple letters and numbers that belonged to one of the newest species in the galaxy. A species that most powers ignored because they were too young and weak to matter. Humans. The ship that had torn through space and emerged from the void was human-made. Commander Vextal appeared on Kekstar's screen. His face was tight with worry. "Lieutenant, I need you to confirm something. The readings you're sending, are you certain they're accurate?" "Yes, sir. I've checked everything 3 times. The ship is real." "And the markings? You're sure about the language?" Kekstar looked at his detailed scans. The letters were clear now. UES Prometheus Rising was written along the massive hull. Below that, smaller text in the human language. Yes, sir. It's definitely human. Vextal was quiet for a long moment. This changes everything, he finally said. The humans have been in space for less than 300 years. They barely have colonies beyond their home system. How did they build something like this? Kextar had no answer. None of the galaxy's experts had answers either. The messages flooding his station all asked the same questions. How was this possible? What technology did the humans use? Where did they get the resources to build such a massive vessel? The ship hung in space like a sleeping giant. It wasn't moving or attacking. It just existed, making every other vessel in the galaxy look small and weak by comparison. Kextar's instruments detected massive power sources inside the hull. Energy readings that matched entire star systems. More messages arrived every minute. Fleet commanders were changing course to investigate. Scientists demanded immediate data sharing. Politicians called for emergency sessions. The appearance of one human ship had triggered the biggest galactic crisis in 1,000 years. The hegemony's response came first. 3 of their largest battle groups changed direction and began moving toward the void. These were ships that could destroy planets. Ships that had conquered half the galaxy. But next to the human vessel, even they looked small. The ethereals were next. Their crystal ships began to glow brighter as they moved through space toward the coordinates. The ethereals were ancient and wise. They had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. But Kextar could hear the confusion in their transmitted messages. They had never seen anything like this human ship. The collective sent their geometric vessels in perfect formation. Everything the collective did was precise and calculated. They had computers that could predict the movement of entire solar systems. But their calculations had never included the possibility of a human ship this size. Even the mysterious architects stirred from their deep space projects, beings so advanced that most species considered them myths. If the architects were paying attention, then this human ship was more important than anyone realized. Kextar watched his screens as the greatest powers in the galaxy scrambled to respond to something they couldn't understand. The humans had always been considered weak. They had small ships and simple technology. They asked for help instead of demanding it. They traded instead of conquering, but now they had built something that made every other species look primitive. The lieutenant continued to monitor the massive ship as it floated silently in space. He noticed something else that made his blood run cold. The ship's hull had what looked like weapon ports, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Each port was bigger than most ships' main guns. This wasn't just a big ship, it was a weapon. A weapon that could probably fight entire fleets by itself. As reports came in from other monitoring stations, Kextar realized something that terrified him even more. Long-range sensors had detected similar energy signatures in other parts of human space. Signatures that suggested this massive ship wasn't alone. The humans hadn't just built one impossible vessel. They had built multiple ships like this. Ships that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Kextar sent his final report to headquarters and sat back in his chair. The galaxy would never be the same. The humans had announced their presence in a way that no one could ignore. Every empire would have to reconsider their plans and policies. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human power had begun, and it all started with a single ship emerging from the void, changing everything in the space of a few hours. The Titan-class vessel hung in space like a promise and a threat, waiting to see how the galaxy would respond to humanity's rise. Admiral Chunwei stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus Rising and watched the reports come in from across the galaxy. The massive screens around him showed fleet movements from every major power in known space. Red dots marked hegemony battle groups, blue lights showed ethereal crystal ships. Green squares indicated collective geometric vessels. All of them were moving toward human space. Chun was a small man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 40 years in the human navy, working his way up from a junior officer to the commander of humanity's greatest achievement. but nothing in his long career had prepared him for this moment. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her station. "We're getting response signals from the other projects." Defiant Dawn reports ready status. Eternal Vigilance confirms operational, Chun nodded slowly. The 3 Titan-class ships represented 20 years of desperate work. 20 years of humanity's best minds pushing beyond what anyone thought possible, while the ancient empires had grown comfortable with their established technology. Humans had done something different. They had refused to accept limits. The idea had started simple enough. Earth scientists had captured alien technology from every species they encountered. They learned how hegemony shields worked. They figured out ethereal crystal energy systems. They decoded collective computational methods. Then they did something no other species had tried. They combined it all. "Sir," came another voice from the communication station. "Priority message from Earth Defense Command." The main screen switched to show Admiral Morrison, the head of human military forces. His face was grim but determined. "Chun, what's the status on your end?" "All systems operational, sir. The emergence went exactly as planned. Every major power in the galaxy knows we exist now." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. "Good, because they're not just watching anymore. Our deep space sensors show massive fleet movements. The hegemony has diverted 3 full battle groups from their war with the outer colonies. That's over 200 ships, Chun." Chun felt a cold weight in his stomach. 200 hegemony vessels could destroy entire solar systems. Each ship carried weapons that could crack planets. Their shields could withstand the blast of a small star. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had been the undisputed military power in the galaxy. "What about the others?" Chun asked. "The ethereals have awakened their deep sleep fleets. Ships that have been dormant for thousands of years are powering up. The collective has shifted their entire exploration matrix to focus on human space. Even the architects are moving. We detected signature energy patterns from the Void Builders yesterday." Chun closed his eyes for a moment. The Void Builders were myth made real. Ancient beings who constructed megastructures in the empty spaces between galaxies. If they were taking notice, then humanity had truly changed the game. "Orders, sir." Morrison's expression grew harder. "Hold position. Show them what we built, but don't fire unless fired upon. This is a demonstration, not a war, yet." The communication ended, leaving Chun alone with his thoughts and his crew. Around him, 300 of humanity's best officers worked at stations that represented the peak of human engineering. The bridge itself was a marvel. Neural link interfaces allowed the crew to think commands directly to the ship. Quantum computers processed information faster than entire collective processing centers. Adaptive armor shifted and changed based on threat assessments. "Admiral," called Commander Torres from the tactical station. "Long-range sensors detect incoming vessels. Multiple species, ETA 6 hours for the fastest ships." Chun walked to the main display and studied the approaching fleets. The hegemony ships moved in perfect military formation. Massive dreadnoughts accompanied by smaller, but equally deadly cruisers and destroyers. Their hulls gleamed with the dark metal that had conquered half the galaxy. The ethereal vessels were different. They looked more like living creatures than ships, organic curves and crystal growths that pulsed with inner light. The ethereals were psionics who had learned to grow their technology instead of building it. Their ships could regenerate damage and adapt to new threats. The collective brought geometric perfection to space. Their ships were mathematical shapes that moved with absolute precision. Triangles, cubes, and complex polyhedrons that fit together like pieces of a vast puzzle. Every collective vessel was designed for maximum efficiency and minimal waste. "What are our orders if they demand surrender?" asked Commander Torres. Chun thought about the question carefully. Humanity had built the Titan-class ships for exactly this moment. For 3 centuries, humans had been the weak newcomers in galactic politics. They begged for trade agreements. They asked permission to colonize empty worlds. They accepted insults. and dismissals from species that considered them barely worthy of notice, but humans had one advantage that no other species understood. When faced with extinction, they didn't just adapt. They transcended. "We don't surrender," Chun said finally. "We show them what desperate humans can accomplish." The reports from Earth painted a clear picture of humanity's desperate gambit. For 20 years, every resource had been poured into the Titan project. Mining operations in the asteroid belt worked around the clock. Factories on Mars and Luna produced components that pushed the edge of known science. The best human minds had worked in secret, hidden from the galaxy's intelligence networks. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source, Dr. Elena Vasquez. A theoretical physicist studying dimensional mechanics had discovered something that changed everything. She found a way to access parallel dimensions where the laws of physics work differently. In those dimensions, matter behaved in ways that allowed for impossible engineering. The Titan class ships used dimensional folding technology that made them larger inside than outside. Their hulls contained materials that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Their weapons drew power from parallel realities where energy was more abundant. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kim called out. "Message coming in on all frequencies." "It's being broadcast to the entire galaxy." Cheon straightened his uniform. "Put it on screen." The display showed General Thakemore of the Hegemony High Command. The reptilian being's scales were dark with anger, and his yellow eyes burned with fury. "Attention, human vessel. You are in violation of the Galactic Accords on military vessel limitations. You will surrender your ship for inspection immediately or face the consequences." Chun activated the response channel. "Every species in the galaxy would hear his words." "General Thakemore, this is Admiral Chunwei of the United Earthship Prometheus Rising. We are operating within our sovereign space and following all applicable treaties. We decline your demand for surrender." The general's head moved in what humans had learned was a sign of extreme displeasure. "You dare refuse the hegemony? Your primitive species exists only because we allow it. Surrender now, or we will take your vessel by force." "General," Chun replied calmly, "you are welcome to try." The transmission ended, leaving silence on the bridge. Every crew member understood what had just happened. Humanity had just challenged the greatest military power in the galaxy. There would be no backing down now. "Status report on the other projects," Chun ordered. "Defiant Dawn is holding position near the Centauri system. Captain Santos reports all systems green. Eternal Vigilance is stationed at the edge of Sol system. Captain Park confirms ready status." Chun felt a moment of pride in his fellow humans. 3 ships, 3 crews, 3 demonstrations that humanity would not go quietly into extinction. Each Titan-class vessel represented the absolute peak of human achievement. Technologies that other species said were impossible. Engineering that defied conventional understanding. The waiting began. 6 hours until the first alien fleets arrived. 6 hours to see if humanity's greatest gamble would pay off or lead to their destruction. Around the galaxy, other species watched and waited to see how this confrontation would unfold. In the hegemony capital, military leaders planned assault strategies against an unknown human technology. In the ethereal crystalline cities, ancient minds tried to understand how young humans had achieved such advancement. In the collective's computational centers, millions of calculations tried to determine the probability of human success. None of them understood the simple truth that drove human achievement. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't calculate the probability of success. They simply refused to accept failure as an option. Chun looked out at the stars and thought about Earth. 3 centuries ago, humans had been alone on a single world, dreaming of reaching the stars. Now they commanded vessels that made the galaxy's ancient powers take notice. The transition from weakness to strength hadn't been gradual. It had been sudden, dramatic, and undeniable. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Kim. Priority message from Captain Santos on Defiant Dawn. Hegemony scouts have entered the Centauri system. They're requesting permission to engage. Chun considered the request. The moment of truth was approaching faster than expected. Soon, the galaxy would see what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept limitations. Tell Captain Santos to hold position but prepare for combat. If they fire first, she has permission to respond with full force. The die had been cast. 3 human ships against the combined might of. Ambassador Sarah Martinez adjusted her formal blue uniform as she walked through the corridors of Nexus Point Station. The neutral trade hub buzzed with activity unlike anything she had seen in her 15 years of diplomatic service. Security. Guards from 6 different species patrolled the halls. Emergency meetings filled every conference room. The station's communication arrays worked overtime to handle messages. Flying between empires across the galaxy. Sarah had been Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Trade Federation for 8 years. She was used to being ignored at most diplomatic gatherings. Humans were new to galactic politics, and most species treated them like children who needed guidance. But today was different. Today, every major power in the galaxy wanted to speak with her. The main conference hall had been prepared for the emergency summit in just 12 hours. Representatives from 7 different empires sat around a circular table that could have hosted a small army. The air recycling systems worked hard to accommodate the different atmospheric needs of each species. General Fakemur of the hegemony sat across from Sarah, his dark scales reflecting the harsh lighting. His yellow eyes focused on her with barely controlled anger. To his left sat High Counselor Veltar, also hegemony but from their diplomatic corps. The hegemony had sent both military and political leaders, which meant they took this crisis very seriously. The ethereal delegation consisted of 3 crystal beings who seemed to glow with their own inner light. Their leader, Prime Resonance Kithara, communicated through harmonic vibrations that the station's translators converted to speech. The ethereals rarely attended diplomatic meetings in person, preferring to send holographic projections. Their physical presence meant this situation was unprecedented. The collective had sent computational node 7742, a geometric being that looked like a walking mathematical equation. Its metallic surface shifted between different shapes as it processed information. The collective usually made decisions through vast computer networks, but they had designated this single node to speak for their entire civilization. Representatives from the Trade Federation, the Outer Rim Alliance, and the Free Worlds Coalition completed the gathering. Each group controlled significant territory and resources in the galaxy. Never before had they all met together to discuss a single issue. Sarah took her seat at the table and placed her hands flat on the smooth surface. She had prepared for this moment, but nothing could have readied her for the intensity of attention focused on her. Every being in the room represented billions of lives and thousands of worlds. They all wanted answers about humanity's impossible achievement. General Fakemur spoke first, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding armies. Ambassador Martinez, your species has violated the fundamental balance of galactic power. The vessel that emerged from the void exceeds all established parameters for military construction. Explain how humans achieved this impossibility. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. General, the UES Prometheus Rising was constructed entirely within human space using resources from our own systems. We have violated no treaties or agreements. Impossible, hissed High Counselor Veltar. Humans lack the industrial capacity for such construction. Your entire civilization has existed for less than 3 centuries. The hegemony has been building warships for 10,000 years, and we have never created anything approaching that. Scale, Prime Resonance Kithara's harmonic voice filled the room like music. The crystalline matrices detect dimensional folding technology in the human vessel's construction. Such knowledge requires millions of years of research. How did humans acquire these secrets? Sarah had expected this question. Our scientists developed the technology through independent research. We studied the fundamental laws of physics and found ways to work within them that others had not explored. Computational node 7742's surface shifted to display complex mathematical equations. Analysis indicates probability of independent human development at 0.0000847%. Alternative explanations include technology theft, alien benefactor intervention, or dimensional contact with advanced civilizations. Our technology is our own, Sarah replied firmly. Humans have a tendency to find solutions that others consider impossible. When faced with limitations, we don't accept them. We find ways around them. The room erupted in protests and demands for proof. General Thakmer pounded his scaled fist on the table. Your species has been granted protected status precisely because you were considered harmless. That protection was based on your technological limitations. If humans can build vessels of this magnitude, then the entire galactic order must be reconsidered. Trade Federation Representative Zexhai, a being with 4 arms and silver skin, leaned forward. Ambassador, surely you understand the concern. The sudden appearance of advanced human military technology destabilizes centuries of carefully maintained balance. Economic projections indicate massive disruption to established trade routes and defense contracts. Sarah looked around the table at faces that showed fear, anger, and confusion. These were beings from civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had grown comfortable with their positions and their assumptions about what was possible. Humanity's emergence challenged everything they thought they knew. I understand your concerns, Sarah said carefully, but I must point out that humans have not threatened anyone. Our vessels remain in our own space. We have made no aggressive moves against any empire or alliance. Yet, growled General Thakmer, your species now possesses the capability to challenge any power in the galaxy. The hegemony cannot allow potential threats to go unaddressed. High Counselor Veltar nodded in agreement. The human vessels must be inspected and their technology assessed. This is not a request, but a requirement for continued peaceful relations. Sarah felt her heart rate increase. This was the moment she had been dreading. I'm afraid inspection of our vessels is not possible. They contain classified technology that we cannot share. The harmonic voice of Kithara rose to a threatening pitch. Refusal to submit to inspection suggests aggressive intent. The ethereals have maintained galactic peace through transparency and cooperation. Human secrecy threatens this harmony. Computational node 7742 processed new data and displayed updated probability calculations. Revised analysis indicates 78.4% probability of human technology representing existential threat to established galactic order. Recommended response includes immediate containment or elimination. Sarah stood up slowly, knowing that her next words would shape humanity's future. Representatives, I want to make something very clear. Humans did not ask to be thrust into galactic politics. We were content to explore our local systems and establish peaceful trade relationships. But when we realized that our protected status could be revoked at any time, we took steps to ensure our survival? What kind of steps? Demanded General Thakmer. We built ships that would make any attack on humanity extremely costly. Ships that could defend our worlds and our people. Ships that would earn us respect instead of pity. The Outer Rim Alliance representative, a tall being covered in blue fur, spoke for the first time. How many ships? Our long-range sensors detected energy signatures suggesting multiple vessels. Sarah paused, knowing that her answer would either strengthen humanity's position or paint them as an even greater threat. The UES Prometheus Rising is not alone, but the exact number and locations of our Titan-class vessels remain classified. The room fell silent. The implications of multiple human supervessels changed the entire strategic situation. Single massive ships could be isolated and destroyed, but a fleet of such vessels represented a new galactic power that could not be ignored. The Trade Federation Representative Zexhai pulled up holographic displays showing economic projections. Multiple Titan-class vessels would shift the balance of military power significantly. Established defense contracts worth trillions of credits could become obsolete overnight. The economic disruption alone could trigger system-wide conflicts. Perhaps said Sarah. It's time for the galaxy to consider that the established order might not be permanent. Humans bring new perspectives and new capabilities. Instead of seeing us as a threat, perhaps you should consider us as potential partners. General Thakmer's scales darkened further. Partners? Your species went from protected status to potential galactic dominance in a single day. How do we know you won't use these vessels to conquer and subjugate other worlds? Sarah looked directly at the hegemony general. Because that's not who we are. Humans don't seek to dominate others. We seek to protect ourselves and our allies. But we will not be bullied or threatened into submission. The emergency alert klaxon suddenly sounded. Throughout the station, red lights flashed as the station's commander's voice came over the intercom. All representatives to remain in place. We have received priority alerts from multiple monitoring stations. Additional human vessels have been detected emerging from concealment. The holographic displays around the room lit up with new data. Long-range sensors showed massive energy signatures appearing throughout human space. Ships that had been hidden were now revealing themselves. The scope of humanity's secret construction program was becoming clear. Captain Maria Santos felt the neural link connect her mind to the UES Defiant Dawn as hegemony ships dropped out of hyperspace around her position. The massive Titan-class vessel hung in the void near Alpha Centauri, its 50-kilometer hull gleaming under the light of 3 suns. 12 hegemony warships had come to test humanity's resolve. Maria had commanded smaller vessels for 15 years, but nothing had prepared her for the raw power at her fingertips. The neural interface allowed her to feel every system on the ship as if it were part of her own body. She could sense the quantum reactors humming with energy, the adaptive armor shifting in response to threat assessments, and the weapon systems charging for potential combat. "Captain," called Lieutenant Commander Park from the tactical station, "lead hegemony vessel is broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Maria ordered. The main screen showed Commander Grextel, a hegemony officer whose dark scales bore the scars of many battles. His yellow eyes burned with the confidence of someone who had never faced defeat. "Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender for inspection. Lower your shields and prepare to be boarded." Maria activated the response channel. "Commander Grextel, the UES Defiant Dawn is operating in neutral space under the protection of the Galactic Trade Accords. We decline your boarding request." "This is not a request," Grextel replied, his voice growing harder. "The hegemony has determined that human vessels pose a threat to galactic security. You will comply or face the consequences." Maria looked at her tactical display. 12 hegemony ships surrounded her vessel. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Their shields could withstand the energy output of a star. For 3 centuries, ships like these had been the ultimate expression of military power in the galaxy, but the Defiant Dawn was different. Built with technology that pushed beyond conventional limitations, the human ship represented 20 years of desperate innovation. While other species had grown comfortable with their established capabilities, humans had refused to accept what others considered impossible. "Commander," Maria said calmly, "I suggest you reconsider your course of action. Humans do not respond well to threats." Grextel's laugh was harsh and mocking. "Your primitive species has been in space for less than 3 centuries. The hegemony has conquered galaxies. Stand down now, or we will take your vessel by force." The communication ended, leaving silence on the bridge. Maria felt the tension in her crew as they waited for her decision. Around the galaxy, other fleets were converging on human positions. The Ethereal's living ships pulsed with psionic energy as they moved through space. The Collective's geometric vessels maintained perfect formation. Every major power was testing humanity's will to fight. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Park reported, "all hegemony vessels are charging weapons and raising shields. They're moving into attack formation." Maria closed her eyes and felt the ship's systems through the neural link. The Defiant Dawn was more than a vessel. It was the culmination of human ingenuity and determination. Every component had been designed to exceed the performance of alien technology. Every system incorporated innovations that other species had never attempted. "Charge all weapons," Maria ordered. "Raise shields to maximum. Prepare for combat." The bridge hummed with activity as the crew prepared for what would be humanity's first major space battle. Maria felt the massive quantum torpedo launchers powering up. Each torpedo contained enough energy to crack a continent. The pulse beam arrays came online, drawing power from dimensional taps that accessed parallel realities where energy was more abundant. "All stations report ready," Park announced. Maria opened her eyes and looked at the tactical display. The hegemony ships had formed a classic attack pattern designed to overwhelm a single target with concentrated fire. It was a formation that had destroyed countless enemies over the millennia. "Open a channel to all ships," Maria ordered. When the connection was established, she spoke clearly and calmly. "This is Captain Maria Santos of the United Earthship Defiant Dawn. You have demanded our surrender and threatened us with destruction. Humans do not surrender to bullies. If you want a fight, we'll give you one." Commander Grextel's face appeared on screen again, twisted with rage. "Destroy them! Show these primitives the power of the hegemony." The attack began with a coordinated barrage that would have obliterated any conventional vessel. Dozens of plasma beams and quantum missiles converged on the Defiant Dawn's position. The combined firepower was enough to sterilize an entire planet, but the human ship didn't die. The adaptive armor phased through the energy weapons, shifting into dimensional states where the attacks couldn't touch it. The solid projectiles struck quantum barriers that deflected them harmlessly into space. The Defiant Dawn emerged from the assault completely undamaged. Maria felt the ship's systems, analyzing the attack patterns and adapting countermeasures. The neural link allowed her to process information at superhuman speeds. She could see the weaknesses in hegemony shield technology, the predictable patterns in their weapon cycling, the small delays in their coordination. "Return fire," she ordered. "Target their lead vessel." The Defiant Dawn's quantum torpedoes launched with devastating effect. Each missile phased through the hegemony shields as if they didn't exist, striking the hulls directly. The lead hegemony ship, a massive dreadnought that had conquered dozens of worlds, shuddered under impacts that shouldn't have been possible. The hegemony officers watched in shock as their most advanced shields failed to stop human weapons. Systems that had protected their ships for thousands of years were suddenly useless against technology they didn't understand. "Impossible," Grextel whispered, staring at his damage reports. "Our shields are impenetrable." Maria opened a communication channel. "Commander, your shields work fine against conventional weapons, but humans don't build conventional weapons." The battle intensified as more hegemony ships joined the attack. But each assault revealed the same truth. Human technology operated on principles that made traditional defenses obsolete. The Defiant Dawn moved through space like a predator among prey, its weapons punching through armor that had never been breached, its defenses adapting to every attack from across the galaxy. Other powers watched the battle through long-range sensors. In the ethereal crystal cities, ancient minds struggled to comprehend how young humans had achieved such advancement. The ethereals had been using psionic technology for millions of years, but their mental attacks had no effect on human ships. Designed with consciousness patterns they couldn't touch, the collective's computational centers processed the battle data and reached conclusions that defied their logic matrices. Human vessels operated with efficiency ratings that exceeded theoretical maximums. Their adaptive systems learned and evolved faster than collective computers could calculate. Even the mysterious architects stirred from their deep space projects to observe the fighting. Beings who had constructed megastructures spanning light years found themselves impressed by human engineering achievements. Maria felt the battle through every sensor on her ship. The neural link allowed her to experience the combat as if she were personally dodging every attack and firing every weapon. She could sense the growing desperation in the hegemony formations as their most powerful vessels proved helpless against human technology. "Captain," Park reported, "3 hegemony ships are retreating." The others are regrouping for another assault. Maria studied the tactical display. The remaining hegemony vessels had formed a defensive formation, their commanders finally realizing they were facing something beyond their understanding. But retreat wasn't an option for them. The hegemony's reputation was built on military supremacy. To flee from a single human ship would undermine their authority across the galaxy. "They're calling for reinforcements," the communications officer announced. "Long-range sensors detect additional hegemony fleets moving toward this position." Maria smiled grimly. The hegemony was escalating the conflict, but they didn't understand what they were really facing. The Defiant Dawn wasn't just a single powerful ship. It was proof of concept for an entirely new approach to warfare. An approach that made conventional military thinking obsolete. "Open a channel to Earth Command," Maria ordered. "Inform them that first contact protocols are now in effect. The galaxy has seen what one human ship can do." As she spoke, alerts came in from across human space. The UES Prometheus Rising was engaging ethereal vessels near the Kepler Void, the UES Eternal. Vigilance was holding off collective ships at the edge of Sol System. Humanity's 3 Titan-class vessels were simultaneously fighting the galaxy's greatest powers, and they were winning the battle for humanity's place in galactic civilization had begun. For 3 centuries, humans had been considered weak newcomers who needed protection from stronger species. But those days were ending. The galaxy was learning that when humans faced extinction, they didn't just adapt. They transcended every limitation that others accepted as absolute. Commander Grextal stared at his tactical displays as another hegemony ship limped away from the battle, its hull cracked and its shields failing. His hands shook as he realized the truth that military commanders across the galaxy were discovering: the age of human weakness was over. The age of human dominance had. Fleet Admiral Chunwei stood before the Galactic Council for the first time as humanity's official representative. The massive chamber on Galactic Station Prime had been built to accommodate thousands of delegates from across known space. Today, every seat was filled. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had come to witness this historic moment. 6 months had passed since the Titan Crisis, as historians were already calling it. 6 months since human ships had emerged from the void and changed everything. The galaxy was still adjusting to the new reality that humans were no longer the weak newcomers who needed protection. They were a major power that demanded respect. Chun wore his formal Earth Navy uniform with the new insignia of Fleet Admiral. The promotion had come after the success of the 3 Titan-class vessels in their confrontations with alien fleets. No human had ever held such a high rank before, because no human had ever commanded ships that could challenge entire empires. The council chamber buzzed with quiet conversations in dozens of languages. Translators worked overtime to convert the complex negotiations happening between species that had rarely spoken as equals before. The emergence of human technology had forced everyone to reconsider their positions and alliances. At the center of the chamber sat the High Arbitrator, an ancient being whose species had founded the Galactic Council 10,000 years ago. Her crystalline form pulsed with soft light as she called the session to order. This emergency session will address the formal recognition of humanity as a Tier 1 civilization and their request for permanent council membership. A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Tier 1 status was reserved for species that could influence galactic affairs through military, economic, or technological power. Most civilizations took millennia to achieve such recognition. Humans had done it in 3 centuries. General Fakemore of the hegemony stood to address the council. His dark scales still bore scars from recent battles, and his voice carried the weight of defeat. The hegemony objects to this premature elevation. Humans may possess advanced technology, but they lack the wisdom and experience necessary for Tier 1 responsibilities. Trade Federation Representative Zexhai rose next, her forearms gesturing as she spoke. The Federation supports human advancement to Tier 1 status. Their technology has already revolutionized defensive capabilities across the galaxy. Many worlds now seek human protection instead of relying on traditional power structures. This was true In the months following the Titan crisis, dozens of smaller civilizations had approached Earth seeking defense agreements. The demonstration of human military capability had broken the monopoly that older empires held on providing security to weaker worlds. Computational. Node 7742 of the collective displayed probability calculations on the chamber's main screens. Analysis indicates human technological advancement rate exceeds all historical precedents. Projected capabilities in one standard century suggest potential for galactic dominance. The collective recommends immediate integration to maintain stability. Chun listened to the debates with mixed feelings. Part of him was proud that humanity had achieved so much in such a short time. But another part worried about the responsibilities that came with their new status. Earth's population was still small compared to the ancient empires. Their territory consisted of just a few dozen star systems. Yet their technology made them equals to civilizations that controlled thousands of worlds. Prime Resonance Kithara of the Ethereals spoke in harmonious tones that filled the chamber with music. The Ethereals sense great potential in humanity, but also great danger. Their minds operate on frequencies we cannot touch. Their thoughts are alien to our understanding. How can we trust beings we cannot comprehend? This was the heart of the matter. For millions of years, the galaxy's major powers had understood each other. The hegemony conquered through military might. The ethereals guided through psionic wisdom. The collective optimized through computational perfection. Each species played a role in the established order, but humans were different. They didn't fit the patterns that other species expected. They combined technologies in ways that seemed impossible. They solved problems by refusing to accept that the problems were unsolvable. They transcended limitations that others considered absolute laws of nature. The High Arbitrator turned her attention to Chun. Fleet Admiral Chun Wei, you may address the Council on behalf of humanity. Chun stepped forward to the speaking platform. Every eye in the chamber focused on him. Representatives of billions of beings waited to hear what humanity wanted from galactic civilization. Honored delegates, Chun began. 6 months ago, most of you barely knew humans existed. We were the young species asking for trade agreements and colonization rights. We were grateful for the protection of older, wiser civilizations. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that showed fear, respect, and uncertainty in equal measure. Today you debate whether we deserve a seat at this table, whether we have earned the right to speak as equals. But I want to make something clear. Humans didn't seek this position. We didn't build our ships to conquer or dominate. We built them to survive. General Fakemur interrupted. Survival does not require weapons capable of destroying fleets. Chun turned to face the hegemony representative. General, with respect, that statement shows exactly why we needed such weapons. For 3 centuries, humans lived at the mercy of species who could destroy us at any time. Our protected status could be revoked with a single vote. Our worlds could be claimed by any empire with sufficient military force. The chamber fell silent as delegates absorbed his words. Many of them had voted on human issues without considering the precarious position that Earth occupied in galactic politics. We studied your technologies not out of curiosity, but out of necessity, Chun continued. We learned your military capabilities, not for conquest, but for defense. We built ships that could match your fleets because we refused to remain helpless. Trade Federation Representative Zexhai leaned forward. But surely you understand the concern. Your advancement threatens the stability that has maintained galactic peace for millennia. Chun smiled. Peace for whom? The hegemony has been at war with the outer colonies for 50 years. The ethereals and the collective have border disputes that claim thousands of lives annually. The Free Worlds Coalition barely maintains unity. Against pirate raids, the galaxy has never been peaceful. It has only been predictable. His words struck home. The established powers had grown comfortable with their eternal conflicts and stable alliances. They knew their place in the hierarchy and accepted the limitations of their roles. Humanity's emergence had shattered those comfortable assumptions. What? Do humans want? Asked the High Arbitrator. We want the same thing every species wants, Chun replied. Security for our people, the right to explore and expand. Recognition as equals in galactic civilization. But most importantly, we want to contribute to something better than the endless cycle of conflict and stagnation that has defined this galaxy for too long. Computational node 7742 processed new data. Define something better. Chun looked directly at the geometric being. Innovation, progress, cooperation based on mutual respect rather than fear. Humans have proven that the limitations other species accept are often just assumptions. Imagine what we could accomplish if we worked together to push beyond those boundaries. The chamber erupted in discussions as delegates debated Chun's words. The concept of fundamental change was both exciting and terrifying to civilizations that had remained static for millennia. Prime Resonance Cathara's harmonic voice rose above the noise. Humans speak of cooperation, but they hide the secrets of their technology. How can we trust beings who refuse to share their knowledge? Chun had expected this question. The ethereals guard the secrets of psionic manipulation. The collective protects their computational algorithms. The hegemony conceals their shield technologies. Every species keeps strategic knowledge classified. Humans are no different. But your knowledge could revolutionize galactic civilization, insisted Zexhai. And it will, Chun promised. But on terms of mutual benefit, not forced sharing. Humans are willing to trade technologies with species that treat us as equals. We will share discoveries with allies who respect our sovereignty. But we will not submit to inspection or surrender our secrets to those who still think of us as primitives. The High Arbitrator called for order as the discussions grew heated. The Council will vote on humanity's petition for Tier 1 status and permanent membership. All in favor. Lights appeared across the chamber as delegates registered their votes. Chun watched as the tally appeared on the main display. The numbers climbed steadily higher. The Trade Federation voted in favor. Several smaller alliances followed. Even some hegemony worlds broke ranks to support human advancement. When the counting finished, humanity had achieved the required majority by a significant margin. The motion passes, the High Arbitrator announced. Humanity is hereby recognized as a Tier 1 civilization with full rights and responsibilities. Fleet Admiral Chun Wei will serve as their permanent representative to this council. Chun felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. In 3 centuries, humans had gone from a single world species to a galactic power. The journey from